Chauncey Ray in a Chucky toy. You'll see me here, see me there, not hard to miss with my orange hair. I sit and stare, just love to scare him. When I speak, I'll fucking swear. With chronic aggression, I'll brandish this weapon. I'm clearing a pathway to Annie's possession. There's never discretion when killing's in session. I'm telling the truth, you can call it confession. Snaps like a car screw, smashed in like a boat on a horseshoe. You're just a preview.
Welcome one, welcome all, welcome one and all to the more hardcore marathon of October here on the channel. Revenge of 31 Days of Horror. After having previously covered a ton of horror films from my other channel on Cynical Saiyan 77, I titled in a marathon called 31 Days of Horror. For the past 2 years, every October, I've been doing a 31 Days of Horror. So for this October, I've decided to continue that tradition and just consolidate it into Animation Station, since you guys all voted to just end Cynical Saiyan 77. So, yep, that's how we're going to do it. And I actually have another video planned later on, which is like a supercut of all the 31 Days of Horror videos from those ones. But just be aware, those ones will be 14 plus only. Well, I recommend 14 plus only, because those ones have a lot of cursing and sometimes show some of the bloody kills. So, that's your warning. But, let's get on our Psycho Masks, because it's time to dive right in to our first 31 Days of Horror marathon. And let's start with Child's Play. Let's start with the Chucky franchise, and with the, with the new TV show season right around the corner, it feels like a perfect time to review all of the previous Chucky movies and see how they hold up after all this time. And for those of you asking, I've already covered the other 2 seasons of Chucky from one of the other 31 Days of Horror, I believe it was last year. And those videos will be in those supercuts. So, that's what you had to look forward to. Yeah, what can I really say about Child's Play that hasn't already been said? It's iconic, it's frightening, it is the birth of an icon. I'll just let my written review speak for itself. And apologies, I'm going to repeat the first few paragraphs. Welcome one and all to the more hardcore horror marathon of October, Revenge of 31 Days of Horror. After previously covering a ton of horror movies on my other channel in a marathon I titled 31 Days of Horror for the past 2 years every single October, I've decided to continue the tradition but consolidate it into Animation Station. Which means you guys have 2 different marathons going on at the same time. One for the family-friendly crowd, and the other for the hardcore horror nuts like me. Seeing as I've already covered the big 3 slasher franchises of the genre, Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as Saw and Evil Dead recently, and the Saw X review should be out before this one, it's only right we move on to the next big name of a franchise of the genre. I made a typo there, and I'm sorry. The psychotic, wisecracking, rude effing killer doll known as Chucky. And with the premiere of the 3rd season of the Chucky TV series right around the corner, it premieres October 4th, it's the perfect time to look back at all the movies and see how they hold up today, beginning with where the murder spree all started for this horror icon, the original Child's Play. A young mom named Karen gets a good guy doll for her son Andy for his birthday from a street peddler, not knowing that it houses the soul of a criminal, hell-bent on continuing where he left off before his death. Child's Play is undoubtedly a classic of the horror genre for more than a few reasons. It was one of the first projects by an LGBTQ director to gain mainstream popularity, Chucky himself becoming one of the iconic horror movie slasher villains, with the amazing voice performance by the legendary Brad Dourif, and arguably scaring more people than the other slashers because how creepy dolls already are in real life. Yeah, that's one of the things that Chucky has over the other horror killers. It's something from real life coming out to kill you. It's not some made-up thing in a fantasy. Like, dolls exist in real life, and while some of them are okay, a lot of them are very, very creepy. Especially, like, the really old ones. Ugh. So, he definitely has that effect on people, even if they're not scared of any of the other horror villains. This is the one that can still get under their skin. Add on a great original concept, simple but decent kills, Maggie's death probably being the most memorable of them, good effects, animatronics-wise, a few funny one-liners to add a little bit of levity between the horror, some pretty decent jump scares, a solid story, a fantastic, very violent ending, a pretty good pacing, and add on that, and you have a pretty enjoyable movie that still mostly holds up. However, like any horror classic, it still has some faults that need to be addressed. Detective Mike Norris, played by Jack Skellington himself, Chris Sarandon, is a very boring character. The acting besides Chucky and Andy themselves is subpar at best. The whole becoming more human thing is constantly contradicted in the second half, making it feel like a very pointless plotline that was kind of just thrown in there to try and force some kind of suspense, but it barely has any effect at all, so don't worry about it. The rest of the effects are okay but inconsistent. That one scene in the hospital where it's obviously a guy in a Chucky suit being more than a little bit distracting. It struggles to find a balance between serious and silly, which is passable because it's the first of the series, and they didn't quite find their footing yet. And the runtime is a bit too long and could have easily been shortened by at least 15 minutes. Overall, though, this is still a pretty good start for the franchise. Sure, it has its faults, but it's still pretty entertaining and a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, that pretty much sums up all my thoughts on this movie. It's fun to watch, it's entertaining, and it's the start of a classic franchise. It just has some pretty noticeable faults. But if you're like me, you're going to probably ignore most of them and just enjoy it for what it is. And that is a serious, slightly silly, goofy, really entertaining, over-the-top slasher. So, it's not super bloody, it's not super gory, but it makes up for it with a decent story, a really cool concept, and, the birth of one of the most iconic horror villains of all time. So, because of that, it all comes together to result to a final verdict of a strong 7 out of 10. I still think this movie's really good. I still think this movie's very entertaining and worth watching. Just set your expectations accordingly. Especially when the next one is even better. Oh yeah, you guys know exactly what I'm about to talk about. It's the one that probably all of you should know I'm excited to talk about, considering it's still one of the most highly regarded movies of that franchise. I don't know what else to say, so thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Feel free to make comments about my Psycho mask if you so desire. And I will see you guys next time when we dive into the movie that solidified Chucky as a legendary horror icon with the excellent, awesome, one swear per video rule, kick-ass Child's Play 2.